Hi everyone, I'm Alex Rozenfeld, founder of Freshwater Investments, and this is Coffee with the T-Bird podcast. I sit down with fellow T-Birds who are making an impact in business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Each episode features conversations that explore the pivotal moments, personal motivations, and lessons learned on their journeys. Whether you're a student, alum, or someone passionate about business and personal growth, you'll walk away with fresh ideas. This is a bit more than a podcast. It's a platform for connections, storytelling, and celebrating the global spirit of Thunderbird. This podcast is sponsored by Freshwater Investments. At Freshwater, we make it simple for you to invest in large apartment communities across the United States so you can earn passive income, grow your capital, and benefit from real estate tax breaks without owning or managing property yourself. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Rozenfeld, founder of Freshwater Investments, and today I'm honored to welcome Ambassador Larry André. Larry spent more than 3 decades in the U.S. Foreign Service, working on the front lines of diplomacy across Africa, from post-conflict states to active war zones. Most recently, he served as U.S. Ambassador to Somalia, and before that to Djibouti and Mauritania, leading teams focused on security, humanitarian response, and building durable institutions in some of the world's most complex environments. Larry began his international career as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, and today he brings the real-world experience into the classroom as a professor of practice at the University of Texas, Austin, where he teaches diplomacy, global policy, and crisis negotiation. He holds a bachelor's in political science from Claremont McKenna College and MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management. He and his wife live in Texas with their sons, and his daughter recently joined the U.S. Foreign Service. I'm really excited about this conversation. Ambassador, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to reconnect with Thunderbird. It's been a few years.
Great. Thank you for joining us. And so let me start our conversation from that moment when you wrote a letter when you were finishing up your service in Somalia a few years ago. You wrote a letter, "Thank you, Somalia," which is posted on the embassy website. Why was it important for you to end the service that way?
Well, certainly my entire career in State Department and before was one of seeking partnerships, looking for shared interests between the United States and the countries that I had been accredited to. And that means at the state-to-state level, that means at the people-to-people level. And so when you are pursuing shared interests and you're working together to achieve those shared interests, you get to know people. And I wanted to say thank you to the Somali people who I had come to know and appreciate their struggles, their progress. I had first visited Somalia in 2001 when I was based in Addis Ababa. My regional work took me to Somalia. And then I was responsible for Somali affairs when I was based in Nairobi between '06 and '08, and then had come back as ambassador. So I had been able to see the progress they made from the depths of just violent anarchy to state formation and beginning to improve the conditions of the people. So I wanted to recognize that and say thank you.
No, that's great. So now let's go back to your beginnings. Let's talk about your childhood, maybe about your family and parents. Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school?
Sure. My parents both come from a small town in northern Indiana to see the world. My father joined the Navy. So I was born in San Diego, which is a Navy town, and my sister was born in Key West, Florida, which is also a Navy town. And then he got out of the Navy after he got his technical training, and very ambitious, driven person to do well by his family and his career. He was the first one on either side of the family to get a college education, and he took us around to different parts of the country. So he got his bachelor's degree at University of Arizona in Tucson. So I remember growing up in Arizona very well. I know it's the rival institution, but it was it was a good place to be a kid. This is around 1970, that era. And then we ended up coming to Texas when I was in eighth grade. And so I've been associated with Texas ever since. But I did live in a couple other places around the country, Michigan, California, different places. So that was my background.
And Ambassador, did during high school years, did you have any interesting jobs or
I
any
worked at
interesting
Mickey's.
side?
Yeah, my side hustle was my sister and I both worked at McDonald's. I was the fried clerk, fried cook, I want to say, and my sister was the clerk up at the counter. So, yeah, that's one job. I'll go way back to my first job ever was when I was in Tucson, I and some other kids would go over to the polo grounds and we would just, we'd be walking polo ponies in between the chuckas.
Hmm,
And
that's a
so
fun job.
they were well-to-do Arizonans and well-to-do Mexicans for the most part. As those were the two sides. Then they would go back and forth between each other's countries as to where they were having their matches. The Mexicans tipped better, so there was competition amongst us to get the Mexican polo players to hire us, but the money was good. So that was my first job ever. Was in Tucson, and it wasn't a regular paying job or anything. It was like whatever you could hustle. Well, what would you pay me to walk your polo ponies?
That's a fun job. And then you went to back to California to Claremont, McKenna.
Yep, that's right. I have family there. I have family in Tacoma, Washington, and family in Texas. So those three states.
Yeah, now it's very competitive school. It's very hard to get in. Was it the case
I
years
think it's a
ago?
lot larger than when I was there. When I was there were only 800 students at Claremont. Of course, we have the other Claremont colleges there, and we could take classes at one another's schools, and the campuses all are next to one another. So it seems like, in some ways, it seems like one big campus, but we had our own
Hmm.
distinct identity. And almost all my classes were at CMC, a couple at Pomona.
Got it. And
A good education. I'm happy I went there.
yeah, it's a great school. And so, what were your first job after the college?
Peace Corps.
Peace Corps.
Yeah, as a Peace Corps volunteer, I had some French, so they sent me to Senegal. I really didn't care where they sent me. I didn't have any particular thing for Africa. I'd taken a class on African history and another one on Latin American history, another one on East Asian history, because I was interested in the world, but I didn't care where Peace Corps sent me. They sent me to
Where's
Senegal, and I fell in love with Senegal, and then I fell in love with the continent.
where's that interest for the world came from? Or what do you think?
Gosh, that's a really good question because I didn't have much international exposure growing up. But while I was at Claremont McKenna College, I had a semester abroad in Denmark, which is really an easy place for your first international experience. Denmark is pretty easy, but it was a great experience. And then I and other students used Denmark as our platform to discover other places in Europe. Um, but that really got me interested in international world. I did a second semester abroad, which is unusual. This is what was in Yugoslavia, what was still then Yugoslavia,
Hmm.
around 1982. And that was a different experience than Denmark, fascinating. And you could begin to see that trouble was ahead. But we went to all of the republics that are now independent countries.
And before this recording, you mentioned that you also made a short trip to Russia during
Yeah,
that
that's right.
time
While in Denmark,
while in Denmark. What was your impression of the communist country uh, at that time?
oh, I mean, gosh, I will tell you just from that era, a lot of the students brought Levi jeans with them, much more than they could possibly need during their trip,
Right.
because there was quite a trade, a black market trade going on. And then they would leave with the fur hats and all of that kind of Soviet.
And black caviar.
Yeah, exactly. I was always afraid that I did a little bit of that, but some of my friends did a lot more of it. But I was afraid I'd get caught. No, none of us got caught, but we all did that. Otherwise, I should say I could feel how oppressive it was and so forth. But young students and just out around town and seeing the cultural sites. Um, you know, it wasn't in that sense, it wasn't really representative of the reality of the country because we were in something of a bubble.
Right.
But we did have a chance to talk to Soviet officials, and I was recognized and I asked a question about the invasion of Afghanistan. And I remember that. I don't quite remember my question or the answer, but I remember that. We went to a grade school. That was quite a good experience. And the hotel that we stayed at in Leningrad was full of what was called vodka tourists from Finland.
Hmm.
Who would come over because I guess Finland has a lot of drinking laws that Leningrad didn't.
Yeah.
So vodka tourism, I hadn't heard of that before.
Okay, Ambassador. So you're as a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal. How did that experience shape everything that came after
Fundamental.
in your career?
Yeah, I was Peace Corps volunteer for 2 years in a village of 250 people, an hour walk on the nearest road, no running water. We pulled the water out of a well, no electricity. My first week there, I didn't know how I could possibly stay there for 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, I didn't know how I could possibly leave. Not only me, the other volunteers also, we tended to get very integrated. Senegalese by nature are extremely hospitable and open people. That's their like national motto. The word in Wolof is Teranga, which means hospitality. So it was a very positive experience. Senegal is Africa for beginners in lots of ways. And it is, they've never had a violent change of government. They've never had an unconstitutional change of government. And the people, as I said, by nature are warm and welcoming. So it made it very easy. And then after my Peace Corps volunteer experience, I was Peace Corps staff in Washington. While I was there, I began thinking about business schools, international business, and
Hmm.
that's how I ended up in Glendale, Arizona.
So was it easy to come across Thunderbird name during that time? Was it?
Yeah, I would say so. Just, I mean, just if you get interested in international management, international business, that's a school that is always mentioned. I think I was looking at a school in South Carolina also, but it was really no competition. And frankly, I was eager to get out in the working world. And so the fact that I could do 12 straight months with no break and get my master's and my international MBA, that meant a lot to me. And it was not an act. Well, let me be careful how I say this. It's a professional school. And so there are true academics there. My international relations professor was an academic, but a lot of the professors were professionals themselves. They were professors of practice, which is what my title is now, professor of practice. And that education by practitioners combined with the academic scholars was also very attractive to me, having that combination.
That's great. And how was your overall experience at school? Do you have any favorite memories?
It was intense in a good way. It was Professor Haley was my international relations professor. So excellent. I already had some French, but I took business French there. So I got a lot of business vocabulary that I didn't already have in French. A good circle of friends, South Asians, a couple Africans. There weren't many Africans and some Middle Eastern folks and fellow Americans. So a good mix. I liked the fact that I want to say everyone had already been in the working world in some sense. And so that gave a professional focus from the students and the faculty that I appreciated. That's what I was looking for.
And I'm curious, why did you decide to go into business school? I mean, you were more like in the nonprofit sector in the Peace
Well, I
Corps.
mean, I looked upon it as international management. That was the name of the degree at that time was Masters of International Management.
Hmm.
And so it was applicable to running organizations outside of the headquarters country. So that's one of the courses that I'm now teaching. And by the way, the school I'm at, you correctly said University of Texas at Austin, but
Hmm.
specifically, I'm at the Graduate School of Public Affairs, the Lyndon Baines Johnson School of Public Affairs. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the rationale. That was the reason I wanted international management that could be used for business or public affairs.
Okay, and how did you find your first job out of Thunderbird, and what was it?
I was a USAID contractor. My contracting organization doesn't exist anymore. It's called Vita. But what we were doing was I used a lot of my business skills. We were helping refugees returning from camps in northern Cameroon, Chad. This is in Chad. Chad had been in an extremely destructive war with Libya. Libya had invaded Chad, and the Chadians beat the Libyans. It was the Chadians had Toyota Land Cruisers, and the Libyans had Soyuz tanks, and the Land Cruisers won. I always thought that would make a great commercial for a Land Cruiser. They beat the Soyuz tanks out in the desert, but the capital had been leveled. It was just smoking ruin. So what our role was is identify in the returning refugees who the former tradespeople and business people were, who had lost everything. And so we were giving loans on extremely favorable terms and business training as well. And it was tailors and plumbers and mechanics, but also small business people. There were traders of different sorts. This was our way, one, of helping the refugees return home, but also helping the economy start again by getting these people back into productive activities as they return from the refugee camps.
Hmm.
So that was my job, and that was very much used my skills that I picked up at Thunderbird.
It doesn't sound like an easy job for a graduate from business school and in comfortable income.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was somewhat familiar to me because Chad is very different from Senegal, but it still is the Sahelian part of Africa, the part of Africa just below, just south of the Sahara Desert. There were cultural similarities and cultural differences, and it was French speaking. So all of that applied. And I was happy to use my newly acquired international management, international business skills.
I'm curious, how did you develop that thick skin to be comfortable in those situations, to be able to function and work in the conditions that I assume risky at sometimes. The safety is not it's not at the highest level. And what did it take you to become that person?
Yeah, I don't remember having a whole lot of effort in that conversion. I was always just interested in new experiences, seeing new things. While in Senegal as a Peace Corps volunteer, I traveled to Guinea-Bissau, which is a very rough, much more difficult environment than Senegal is, and a few other places. So that kind of thing I've always been drawn to those sorts of adventures. One thing I tell my students now is that one person's heaven is another person's hell, and the other way around. One person's hell is another person's heaven. So it just depends on what your own interests are and peculiarities. And I am peculiar.
That's great. And so next step, Ambassador, you'll be going into foreign service.
Right. And I should probably tell that story because it has Thunderbird connection. Basically, Thunderbird helped me to accidentally cheat my way into the Foreign Service. A friend and another student and I both took the written exam at Thunderbird, and we both passed our first try and got good scores. I was then invited to take the orals in Los Angeles, and so I asked around campus and I found somebody who had taken the orals already. And I said, yeah, what kind of questions did they ask you? And he remembered some of the questions and he told me. And I said, well, do you know anyone else? And he said, yeah, this woman, and gave me her name as she took it. So I went and talked to her. Same thing. What kind of questions did you ask? Were you asked in the oral exam? And she told me. And then she referenced somebody else. I kept doing this until I seemed to have exhausted the students that had taken the oral exam before. I was doing this so that I would have some idea of the types of questions. When I get to Los Angeles, about half the questions they asked me were questions I'd already heard.
Hmm.
So I guess it's on them for not having changed their questions. They were the same questions.
Yes, and
So
you're
I
talking
had
about,
this unplanned advantage.
and for people who don't know, what exam were you taking?
This is the oral exam. So it's an all day long exam. It starts with just asking you questions.
And
It could be one question could be about economics. The next question could be situational. If you were faced with this situation, what would you do and why? So I would say 6 or 7 questions, and you're responding in front of a board, and with no preparation. It's just off the top of your head, no notes or anything like that. And then there's an exercise. You and the other candidates are sitting around a table, and you're given a group problem to solve. And how do you organize yourself as a group? Or what solutions do you come up with? There's another one where you're in a scenario that the a consulate, I think it was, has been evacuated, and you're sent in, and you have to go through the inbox and prioritize all the tasks that need to get done with no one to turn to for guidance. So that was how it was. I believe that the exam has changed several times since then.
And this is the exam that you need to pass to get into foreign
To get into the
service.
yeah, I don't know if I made that clear. Yeah, the written exam was the written exam to get into the foreign service. Then the oral exam is the oral exam to get into the foreign service.
Hmm.
So yeah, I should have made that clear. But that was I'd passed, but the process is extremely long and bureaucratic. So I was working in Chad for 2 years before I heard back from state. I thought that they'd just forgotten me, or I hadn't made it in after all, even though my scores were good. But finally, they called me and say, "Hey, can you start at the next class?" So I had to
Hmm.
resign from my job after 2 years. Immediately, like within a couple weeks, I was beginning the orientation training in Washington. This was I'll remember the date. It was January 2nd, 1990. So that's when I swore in as a Foreign Service officer.
Great, great. Great. And so let's talk about diplomacy a little bit. As I mentioned, I wanted to be a diplomat when I was a kid because it was the only way for a kid growing up in the former Soviet Union to go and see the world. So let's talk. When people hear the word diplomacy and think of negotiations and speeches, what does diplomacy actually look like on a day-to-day basis?
Gosh, there are moments when it closely resembles what people imagine it to be. When you're when you do what's called presenting your credentials when you first arrive as an ambassador, you are received by the president because as an ambassador, you are the personal representative of the president of your country to the president of that country. And you have this ceremonial guard there, and it's all very fancy. So that exists, but it's a very tiny part of the whole experience. A lot of it is running an organization. So you have usually several different US government agencies there. And as the ambassador, you have a letter from the president saying that you are to lead all of the executive branch of the US government in that country to achieve the goals assigned to you by leadership in Washington. So a lot of that in-house stuff of organizing and leading to achieve specific goals. There's 3 levels of activity. There's the president to president thing where I would regularly go in and see the president of the country. If I had a visitor, then we would be in a big ceremonial space. If there was no visitor, then he and I would be in his office and have a one-on-one. And then the next level is government to government. So my team and I, representing different parts of the US government, would be working with different parts of the host country government to achieve common goals. And then the third level is people to people. So I would often travel around the country and show the flag and meet people, understand what their issues are. Of course, local officials, but also just opportunities to engage with the wider population. So those are the sorts of activities you do.
Interesting. And how do you build trust with local leaders in that environment?
A few things about diplomacy. I'll use Mauritania as an example. There were things that were going on in Mauritania that the president supported that we opposed. And there were other things going on that we supported him on. So people ask why diplomats tend to speak in, I say, vague terms. And that's because you need to make your point, but you don't want to burn a bridge. Because We would push back on slavery. Mauritania has not this modern forms of slavery. No, they have the old school slavery. And we were supporting the abolitionist movement in Mauritania to finally abolish slavery for good. It had been officially abolished a number of times, but never followed up on and never truly suppressed. So we would work on that issue. At the same time, an American company out of Dallas, Texas, had made a major gas discovery in the waters offshore of Mauritania and Senegal. The reservoir was right on the maritime border between these two. And the president of Mauritania, who had come to power through a military coup, he's very much a military man. He said, "Well, we're going to have to readjust that maritime border. We can't let that out. We found it first on our side, so we have to take it all." And part of my role, I went in and we had a relationship by then. And I could say, "Here, Mr. President, take a look at this. In the North Sea, Norway and the Netherlands and the United Kingdom have shared reservoirs, hydrocarbon, oil or gas reservoirs. And this is the agreements that they have to peacefully share this resource and develop it together." Uh, I'm sure I wasn't the only one pointing that out to him, but that's the kind of thing. So you want to will oppose in some areas and you will support in other areas, and you need to keep the communication alive. And you are accredited to the country, not to that president. So the governments may come and go, but our relationship is with the country long term.
You mentioned something that I wanted to follow up. You said you had relationship by that point. How when you go in a new country and you're meeting new president of the country, how do you go about building that relationship?
It starts off ceremonial and formal. And then my day to day contact was the foreign minister. And the foreign minister is a close confidant of the president. So when I hear from the foreign minister, "Hey, you really need to support us with Eritrea, our problematic neighbor to the north. Can you get this word to Washington? Can you do this or that for us?" And then I work with the foreign minister and I do that. Then it gets to the president and they say, "Oh, let me talk to this guy. Now that I know he can actually get things done." Um, and then we had a problem with a Harrier jet that crashed on takeoff. The pilot was funny because we have a large military base there, 5,000 service members, right on the airport. And it's a single runway airport that is both commercial and military. It's an accident waiting to happen. So that was our accident. And our military, the ambassador doesn't have, I said that the ambassador is responsible for all of the executive branch of the US government in that country, but not if there's a combatant command there. Then the combatant command is not under the authority of the ambassador, just like the ambassador is not under the authority of the combatant commander. But we end up doing a lot for them because we know the power brokers in that country. This is Djibouti I'm talking about. And we have the language, we have the contacts, we can make things happen for them. So what happened is the airport authority said, "Move this wreck. This wreck is, we only have one runway and this wreck is posing a hazard." And our military refused to move it. They said, "Oh, we have people flying in from Frankfurt to our accident
Inspect.
investigators. We need to leave it there." Well, a big passenger airplane flew in, and it was this much between that wind clipping the wreckage. And the Djiboutians were just furious with us, and I thought for good reason. And so they just stopped all U.S. use of the airport. And so this is where I go back to the president and I say, "Mr. President, you remember we did this, that, and the other for you. I'd like to call in my chips now. We got it. We understand the mistake. I have communicated that, but we need to go back to business." And so that's it's really a matter of building up your chips and then spending your chips and then building them up again. It's very transactional, and that's how it works.
Got it.
And he did. He allowed us to go back into operation.
And so, what's the hardest part of representing the United States in a crisis or conflict setting? And I'm sure you had a share of that in your career.
Sure. I mean, in Mogadishu, we got shelled every other month, pretty much regularly. And I say we, it was our compound more generally, and their aim wasn't that good. They did something called a shoot and scoot. They would come in a pickup truck, shoot a mortar, and then before the mortar had even landed, they were out of there before they could get caught. And that happened, like I said, every other month, pretty much. So your first concern is taking care of your people. Everyone, we would have training all the time. We would have exercises, practice, and so forth. And people say, well, why are you practicing? Because you're doing it for real so often. We didn't want people to have to stop and think what to do. We wanted to become muscle memory that people just know what they're supposed to do. They have the vest to put on, they have the gear, and they have to we have to know where they are at all times and so forth. So yeah, you do want to take care of your team members. And then I've been in situations in a few places where everyone gets evacuated except me and maybe two or three others. A small team is left. It was like that in Juba, South Sudan, when all the fighting was going on. This is in late 2012, no, late 13, early 14. And again, we had business to do. We couldn't just like hide under our bed when all the fighting was going on,
Right, you got to keep working.
because we were asked to use U.S. influence to stop the fighting. So we were with a really excellent team of American ex special forces, people doing the close protection. I was able to use our influence to get the fighting stopped. Others were doing the same. I don't want to say it was all me. The African Union, the United Nations, the British, the Norwegians, who are very effective there, have a long history there. So we worked together as a team, and the fighting stopped earlier than it otherwise. I'd have to say Uganda also. Uganda sent in their military, and that made a very strong difference in stopping the fighting.
So I guess that was one of the success of your job, and I guess that's a segue for my next question. How do you, Ambassador, measure success? Well, what are the KPIs in diplomatic work?
We have something called integrated country strategy, and those are published. They're available. The current administration may have taken them off the website. They're still available on the archive website. So we have specific goals that are public. Now, there are some goals that aren't public, but most of the goals that we worked on were public, and we would be judged by those. Now, when I say published, there were things that we didn't publish, such as the action timeline, like who's supposed to do what by then. We didn't publish our SWOT analysis. SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. Because if you're going to be talking about weaknesses and threats, you have to say snarky things that would kind of burn bridges with the local government. So that part was internal U.S. government communication only. But the part that says these are our goals in your country was public. And they were, I would say, they represented about 95% of our goals. And then some things we had to be more discreet about.
That's great. And so in your thank you letter, you mentioned that Somalia achieved a great progress in building their country and being peaceful. Can you share maybe a story of hope or progress that you witnessed and it really inspired you?
Yeah, and I say this with a sick feeling in my stomach because over the last year, I'd say Somalia has slipped back in some ways, but that's how human progress normally goes: two steps forward, one step back. But if you compare Somalia that I saw in 2001 to the Somalia of 2026, so 25 years, it's dramatically improved. While I was there, one third of the territory, national territory that had come under the control of the Al-Shabaab terror group had been taken back by the time I left. If I was last in Mogadishu a month ago, I went up to the top of a high-rise building, and there are building cranes, construction all over the place. People have visions in their mind from the 1990s, the era of violent anarchy. That is not what Mogadishu looks like today at all. So it's easy to point to these positive things. You can also see, as I said, where they have slid back. There's about to be another election that should be in May. So we look for continued commitment to democratic governance, and I suspect that we will see continued progress, but it will be uneven. They also haven't well defined yet their federal system, the relationship between the states and the center, and that is always causing contentious arguments between the states and the center. Until that gets sorted out, I believe that that's going to hold Somalia back from being all that it could be. But they've definitely made progress. I don't think any fair observer could say otherwise.
Got it. And maybe if you can talk a little bit about Somali people and its culture, and what's left an impression on you after your time in there in the country.
Sure. One thing to point out, yeah, as mentioned earlier, I was ambassador in Djibouti. Djibouti population is about 60% ethnic Somali. And then the other two groups there are the Afar, who are about 30%, and Yemeni origin Arabs, who are about 5%. Uh, Interesting history about how these folks all came together. So I had become familiar with Somali culture really from Djibouti, and then I'd been to Somalia before, but as far as like living there for that was 3 years and really getting deep into it, that was really Djibouti was my introduction, and Afar culture, which is different, and Arab culture, which is different. But those are the three elements of Djibouti. As far as the Somalis, what to say? I like camel meat and I like camel milk. So that's one aspect. I became an addict of the camel milk, and I can't get it in Texas, so that's a problem. They are a very proud people. A country that is the population is almost all ethnic Somali in Somalia, not entirely, but very close to 100%. But they are divided up into clans, which are sometimes allied, but more often are antagonistic to one another. That's another cultural aspect that holds Somalia back. That diversity is always a good thing, but it needs to be handled in a way that also emphasizes unity and diversity. And they haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. A lot better than before when it was just ethnic militia killing each other. So much better now than it was. But I don't believe that their culture has made the full adjustment to having a successful Somalia and having that competition between clans done in a positive way rather than undermining each other.
Okay. And so I just want to refer to you as a professor and ask you next question as about your current career at the university. What do today's students need to understand about the world that they entering?
It is dynamic and changing. I'd say one of my challenges as a professor is making sure that students base their thinking on a region by its current realities. It's important to know history. It's important to understand where countries come from, but you want to be careful of not letting the past completely define the present. And in some areas, some regions of the world, there has been rapid progress and rapid advancement such that even their recent history doesn't really tell you what they are today. So stay current is something I tell the students. Search for direct knowledge rather than filtered knowledge through other people. You know, what someone said, someone said, someone said. If you can get a direct observation and you rather than hear what these people are like, meet some of these people and get to know who they truly are. Those are the sorts of things that I want to communicate to my students.
And do you see an interest to work in foreign service among your students?
Some of my students, I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. So some of my students, when I first got here, are now foreign service officers. Others recently took the exam, so that continues. My daughter joined in 22. So my daughter is a foreign service officer in Chennai, India. Her next assignment will be in Dakar, Senegal, which she's very happy about. She went to grade school in Senegal, so she knows Senegal very well.
That's great. I don't know if you follow international African soccer. Senegal just won the AFCON.
Oh, very good.
Second time in a row.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Senegal people on that. Well, I guess I want to wrap up with the question, the diplomacy part, with the question, how this life in foreign service over 33 years and being in Somalia and Djibouti and all over Africa, how did it change you? Not as an ambassador, not as a foreign officer, but personally.
I would say if I had spent my entire life within the United States, then my conception of what is a human being would be based purely on what is an American. So if you are exposed to people from many different cultures, and you can look at what are the differences and what are the same. And this is another thing I tell my students. We are all different and we are all the same. And so, because I've had that exposure, I can see the through line of what is similar everywhere while still admiring it and respecting and enjoying the variety, the differences. But it's important to appreciate both, that we are ultimately, we are all humans and have a lot of the same drives, the same wants, the same needs, and we have cultures and religions, personal preferences, and so forth that make us distinct. So that I would say an intense appreciation and realization of that has deeply marked my approach to the world, and that's from that international experience. Also, my wife is from Niger, West Africa. We speak French at home, and she is an American, a naturalized American, and so I have that reminder of cultural diversity. Our home is culturally diverse.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to wrap up our great conversation with a few short questions. What advice would you give to a 20-year-old self, having all your experience right now?
Oh gosh, to be open to the world, whether they choose an international career or not. Love your country. I've been in service to my country. I've risked my life for my country. That's no exaggeration. But I also love my species. So I am human and I am American. And I can identify with my fellow Americans and I can identify with people from elsewhere in the world as well. So even if you don't have an international career, I encourage people to think of themselves. One does not contradict the other. You can be an intensely patriotic to your country and also appreciate the world community. Those don't need to be in opposition to each other. They can be complementary.
Right, right. Yeah. And do you have any message for Thunderbird alumni and Thunderbird student?
Gosh, keep up the tradition. The major change that occurred was after my time as a student. I graduated in '88 from Thunderbird, the old campus, but I understand that Arizona State University has done all they can to maintain the identity and to maintain the traditions. I'm very happy to hear about that. I respect what ASU has done in that regard, and it's important to do that. When I've had Thunderbird reunions all over the world. I remember we had 6 people who were not only all from Thunderbird, they're all from Thunderbird at the same time as me, meeting for lunch in Antananarivo, Madagascar. What's the likelihood of that? But it worked out. So that international connection worldwide and the intense identification that Thunderbird grads have with that experience needs to be honored and maintained. And again, thanks ASU for taking a lot of measures to maintain it.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. And you travel quite a bit throughout your career. What's your next dream destination?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I have a consulting company like a lot of former diplomats do. So I have my professor gig and I have my consulting company gig. That brings me back to East Africa every 6 months. One of my contracts has to do with Ethiopia, another one with Somalia, another one with Kenya. So that keeps me going back. Otherwise, my family likes to travel somewhere every summer with our 2 boys. And so we went to Mexico, had a great summer vacation, and then we're planning Montreal next. It's not abroad because it's part of the United States, but we had a fantastic time in Puerto Rico, which I recommend. but we
Yeah.
always want to get out of our state of Texas at least and discover other parts of the planet at least once a year as a family. And then my work takes me a couple times a year.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Ambassador, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I wish you all the best in your teaching career and in your consulting business. And I have so many questions remaining and about current affairs, but we can leave it for the next time.
All right. I enjoyed the conversation, Alex, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.